Mr Ballen has given us a brand new video today and it's called Welcome to Balloween. Now if you remember last time, Mr Ballen did a Halloween special and he got me right on the hook. He got me listening to this freaking story and I was invested. I was going, oh my god, what's going to happen when this door opens? And it turned out to be the fucking like button. It turned out to be the like button. It was a story that Mr Ballen had made up. And we fell for it. I fell for it. So this time, I'm going to be very, very cautious about this new Mr Ballen story. It's not got a title. I don't know what it's called, but we're here for it. So let's check it out. Okay, well it says, let's celebrate Balloween. I don't trust him after last year. Right, Mr Ballen, let's check this story out.
But you got to wait till the end. So here we go, story time. All right. In 2010, there was this guy named Nate
15
Smith,
years ago,
who was living in Oregon with his family. And unfortunately, in the fall of 2010, his father, the patriarch of the family, suddenly passed away.
Oh, that's sad.
And it was sudden. And, you know, the family was one of those families. It was Nate, his mom, and I believe he had a sister. I know he had at least one other sibling. The four of them spent a lot of time together. That was sort of, whenever they were not at work or school, this was a family that spent a lot of time together. And they especially spent a lot of time together outdoors. They were a very outdoorsy family. They liked to fish, they liked to hunt, go hiking. They lived out near Mount Bachelor in Oregon. Mount Bachelor is like this beautiful, I believe there's a ski resort there, but it's picture the huge mountains, snow, pine trees, it's beautiful.
Right, okay.
And so when this father passed, it sort of immediately created this new, very difficult dynamic. I mean, in addition to there being obviously grief associated and shock associated with his passing, there was also this sudden rupture in the way Nate and his mom and his other siblings sort of lived their day-to-day lives. Suddenly, everything that they did felt different because dad's not around.
I can imagine that because obviously when I lost my dad, like it's 20 years ago now, so don't be like jumping on and saying, oh, sorry, we've lost your dad. Like 20 years ago, when the head of the family goes or dies, you know, you are in shock. You don't know what to do. I mean, I was 27 when he died. So it was like, you know, I was an adult. I'd already left the home. So it was more for my mum and my sister who lived at home. But I mean, the whole dynamic of the family life changes, doesn't it? You know what I mean? My mum downsized from the house and moved into like a flat and stuff. So, you know, everything changes once like the head of the family goes. And I get that. Things do, especially if you are living together, you know, and if you, it's life changing, isn't it?
And in particular, the family had a cabin out. It was near where they lived. They were sort of just outside of Mount Bachelor. They had a cabin that I believe the father actually built many years ago.
Right.
That was tucked away like up in the foothills of Mount Bachelor. And that small cabin, it was a 2-story cabin, little log cabin. That was a place that the family often went to on the weekend for various trips they would go on. But the dad, he really loved that cabin and he would go there all the time. It was sort of like, you would never be at the cabin unless dad was there too.
Big memories,
that's like dad's place.
Yeah.
And so the dad passes away. And so you have this really difficult dynamic now, like their whole world has been turned upside down. And also the dad was the primary breadwinner for the family.
Oh shit.
And so now that he's gone, you know, there wasn't a way to make ends meet for the family. I mean,
that's a different story altogether because once you lose the money and the income and stuff, then you know you basically in shit creek, aren't you? Right? Yeah. So the whole dynamics changed as well because if mum's not being a breadwinner, then you know it's gonna be tough.
He did leave behind some possessions that they'd be able to sell, but for the most part, it was suddenly financially really difficult for the family. And so given what I just described to you about the difficult dynamic, that sudden gap in their lives, the decision really by the mother in particular, there was a decision made pretty quickly to sell the cabin because it just felt like too difficult to imagine any of them going to the cabin and actually enjoying being there.
Yeah. Because if it's dad's place, And you're going to go there, all you're going to be doing is reminding yourself of what it was like when Dad was there. Also, obviously, a cabin is going to be a high monetary value, isn't it? So you're going to get a lot of money to either pay your mortgage off, if you can, or at least keep you sustainable.
To imagine any of them going to the cabin and actually enjoying being there, given that Dad, you know, is not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so this decision is made. Mom's like, we got to sell the cabin. And Nate, the 17-year-old, his experience with his dad was, you know, it was he went hunting and fishing with his dad all the time. His dad was like this pseudo survivalist type guy, and he would bring his son out there to that cabin pretty much more than anybody else. It was like the son and the dad went there especially a lot.
Right.
And the son understood that it makes sense to sell the cabin. He didn't disagree with the decision. However,
to survive,
he just sort of felt like he needed to have closure with this cabin more than his mom or his other sibling. He felt like he needed to go there at least one more time.
Yeah.
If nothing else, to just go close to his dad one last time.
Because you want to go, you remember the spirit of your dad, remember the good times, have one last hurrah in there. And then when obviously you go, then you say that, I've drawn a line under that now, we've done that, let's move on. You know what I mean? It's like, I suppose it's like putting the lid back on, isn't it? You know, it's...
He asked his mom if it would be okay if he went to the cabin by himself, just spent the weekend out there. He'd bring the family dog, whose name was Midnight. He'd go out there for a weekend, and it would just give him a chance to get that closure. And his mom said, you know, it's a great idea. If that's what you want to do, we will wait to list the property. You can go out. It's yours until we say otherwise. Stay out there for as long as you need to. And then when you come back, we'll move forward with selling the property. So Nate, that weekend, this was sometime in, I believe it was December at this point.
Right.
He loads up his dad's truck that his dad had willed to him, and he, you know, brings Midnight the dog along, and Nate, he packed, you know, drinks and snacks. He brought his PlayStation along and some DVDs.
Sounds like me.
Remember when DVDs were a thing? A lot of DVDs.
I remember when DVDs were a thing. Oh my God. Gen Z, I've never had it so good. Everything's on demand, everything's Netflix, everything's Amazon Prime, everything's at the drop of a hat. Back in the day, we had to put video cassettes in. Yes, even before DVDs and tapes and rewinding. CDs were quite good in DVDs because you could skip and you get there quicker than you could with a tape. A tape was a pain in the ass, especially if you got one from a video shop and it wasn't rewound when you had to rewind the whole frickin' tape.
And he took off for the cabin up at Mount Bachelor. And to sort of give you some context of where the cabin was in relationship to civilization, it wasn't so much that this cabin was super isolated and really hard to get to. It wasn't. I mean, there was a main road. You know, it wasn't lots of businesses and houses off of the main road, but there was a main road that led to where there was a side street you would take that would cut up through these tall pine trees. And, you know, about a mile into the forest, you'd get to this property. So again, there's a major road that basically brings you there. However, these cabins that were built on Mount Bachelor were spaced really far apart.
Okay.
So there were other cabins, but the closest one was about a mile away. So the neighbors exist, but they're not close enough to really feel like they're actually out there.
Yeah.
So once you're
it's not like they're a few meters away.
This cabin, it really felt like you were sort of isolated. You're tucked away amongst these huge pine trees, very dense, and there's no neighbors in sight. There's a huge mountain behind you. And so you can go to the main road, go into town, do what you got to do. But as soon as you're in that cabin, it really feels like you're sort of away from the world. And that was actually part of the allure of this cabin. It really felt sort of like peace, you know, tranquil out there. And so Nate, he drives up to the cabin, he turns off the main road, and he makes his way to this cabin. And as he was making his approach along that last stretch before he actually saw his property, it had snowed, not a lot, but there was enough snow on the ground that he was looking out ahead at the road, and he was just gauging if there were other tire tracks on this road he was on. Because before he got to his house, or his cabin, I should say, the road forked in either direction, basically turning into driveways to the other two properties that, again, are a mile away, just about on either side. So this is a mile driveway. It's not really a driveway. These are additional roads.
A mile
driveway. To see
driveway.
if there are tracks that would give away whether or not the other neighbors were around.
Can you imagine that, though? Like, if your driveway is a mile long, that means you've got a substantial amount of land around your cabin. If you've got a lot of grass in those acres, because it's going to be acres, how the fuck would you cut it all? Even on one of them lawnmowers that you drive, by the time you've finished your lawn, the rest of it will have grown back by the time you get around. So, I mean, you'd have to have 3 or 4 people with different lawnmowers.
Because it's the winter, it's the time when folks would come out to their cabin and go snowboarding and skiing up on Mount Bachelor. And
right, fair play, yeah.
Be out here, but he didn't really talk to these people. So he's just looking at the road, and there's no sign that anybody has been out here. It's not a guarantee, but it looks like he's likely the only one out here, at least relative to his 2 closest neighbors, which, again, are miles away. For him, that was kind of great. He didn't expect to see his neighbors, but he figured the more isolation he could have, the easier it would be to sort of feel in touch with his dad. So he gets to the cabin, along with his loyal dog, Midnight, and he parks the truck, he gets out. In front of this cabin, which is a 2-story cabin, there was a clearing basically to park your cars, like a little cul-de-sac in front. That's where they could park their cars.
Right.
But beyond the front of the house where there was that clearing, and obviously beyond the road itself, basically every square inch was taken up with these huge pine trees, very dense forest. So he pulls into the cul-de-sac, he gets out, he takes all his stuff out of his truck, snacks, drinks, PlayStation, the DVDs, his bedding, whatever it is, and he goes inside the cabin. And the layout of the cabin is, it was pretty simple. You walked inside and there was a kitchen and there was a living room that were sort of connected to each other. There was no real wall between them. It was sort of an open floor plan. It's a pretty small cabin. Yeah. So it's like one big room with windows that looked out onto that cul-de-sac from the kitchen. The kitchen was the most farthest forward room on the first floor.
Okay.
And then there was a second floor that you could access via a stairway in the back of the cabin from the living room that would go up to the second deck, which was a master bedroom. There was one other bedroom, a small bedroom, and the master bedroom sat sort of over the kitchen, so towards the front of the cabin. And from the master bedroom on the second floor, there was these sliding glass doors that looked out over, first of all, there was a balcony, a very small balcony just beyond those sliding glass doors. And then beyond that, you basically are looking out at the drive coming up to the property. You're looking out at that clearing, the cul-de-sac where the cars are, and then out to the forest beyond. So he goes in and gets set up, and he sets up his PlayStation in the living room.
Priorities.
Over the next actually 48 hours, Nate had a great time. I mean, he actually expected when he got there to be sort of overcome with grief. He's in the place where everything around him reminds him of his now deceased father. But he found that it was actually really great. He did feel close to his dad. He did feel like this was a really good idea. And he also had the comfort of Midnight, his beautiful black lab. And so he has a really nice couple of days. It's snowing like crazy outside, but each of the days he was there, he was able to shovel out or basically put chains on his tires and get out to town. I'm not exactly sure how he did that, but he got out to town in the first couple of days, got food. He even went.
First red flag of this story. I still don't trust him from last year. He could get out to town and he put chains on his tires, but not quite sure how he did that. Red flag, Mr. Ballen. Still don't trust you from last year.
Snowboarding one of the days. But for the most part, he was just hanging out at the cabin. And most of his time was spent down on the first floor in that living room near the TV. And then he would just obviously sleep upstairs in the master bedroom.
Right.
But on day 3, he was supposed to be there for, I believe, 4 days, or at least 4 days. But on day 3, when he woke up on day 3, the trip started getting really weird. On day 3, he wakes up, and again, he's had 2 very nice days, and he walks into the kitchen and he looks out the window to the front of the property, to the cul-de-sac and beyond, and he sees that even though it's been snowing over the last few days, it has snowed a lot over the night. It snowed, feet of snow have come down.
Oh dear.
And, not alarming. This makes sense for this part of the world this time of the year. But Nate decided, you know what, I just don't have it in me to battle the weather, to battle the elements and try to go into town or try to go snowboarding. I'm just going to spend the whole day inside,
playing PlayStation,
out, playing video games, chilling with my dog, just have a sort of lazy day at the cabin. And he wasn't upset
well,
about
if it was like, what, 2010, what did he say, 2010, 2012, something like that? Is he talking what? PS3? I think you're talking PS3 there, PlayStation 3, aren't you?
This seemed like a great thing. So
good games on
he has
PS3.
this little morning routine, and at some point, Midnight, who, for the record, had been acting like a normal dog to this point in the entire trip. Also, for context, Midnight was a really well-trained dog. Just was an excellent dog. Was not erratic, was not crazy, did what it was told to do, very loyal. And at some point, on the morning of the third day or mid-morning, Midnight began acting kind of funny, like Midnight needed to go outside. It seemed to Nate like Midnight needed to go outside to pee. Okay. And so he just got up out of his chair.
There's
in the
feet
living
of
room,
snow out there.
Went outside with Midnight. Midnight's on a leash. They go outside. It's still snowing. There's tons of snow. And Nate sort of expected that Midnight would not run off, because there's so much snow that she would likely just sort of do her business near the door and come back in. But instead, as soon as they stepped outside, Midnight didn't show any interest in wanting to go to the bathroom. Midnight instead was pulling Nate in the direction of basically towards the road that comes in, basically straight out in front of their cabin. It seemed like she was drawn in that direction. And, the snow is not like 6 feet high. It's, a couple feet of snow. He can walk through it, and he's like, okay. And so he lets, Midnight pull him forward past the truck, and he's sort of walking out to where the road is that leads back out to the main road. And it's at that point that Midnight just stops, and she's looking down the road, just staring off into oblivion here. It's broad daylight at this point. And, Nate is like, what's gotten into my dog? There's clearly she's sensed something out here. But he doesn't see any animals out here. The dog has also not reacted like this at all over the past couple of days. And he's come out here many other times with Midnight. And this is just sort of unusual behavior by Midnight. Okay. But nonetheless, he's like, come on, just like do your business. Let's go, like, come on. And eventually Midnight would, sort of break her stare, and she would go to the bathroom. But as Nate is getting ready to pull Midnight back with him and bring her back into the cabin, he looks a little ways down the road, which he had been looking at to this point, but not critically or closely. And he sees what looks like footprints in the snow. And remember, it's been snowing quite a bit. Okay. And so if there are footprints, it needs to be relatively recent. Otherwise, they'll be covered up by the snowfall.
Because it's been snowing a lot.
And, right away, Nate's thinking how weird that is. There is the possibility that if there were footprints up here, one, it could totally be an animal, which would not be strange. There could be deer or moose or whatever else is in Oregon. But it also could be one of his neighbors. There were times in the past
and a long
where
walk from the mile-long
far away would just go for a walk and sometimes cut through the property line of Nate and the others. That wasn't totally unusual.
Okay.
But just sort of given the fact that he had come in a few days earlier and not seen any sign of anybody being at those other houses, the other cabins, and he had spent the whole day at the cabin, never heard or saw anybody, it just seemed weird that there'd be footprints out here. And so with Midnight, he sort of walks a little bit closer, just farther down towards this road to get a better look. And sure enough, there are footprints. And Midnight, as soon as they start walking in that direction, she began pulling him to go closer and closer. It seemed pretty clear that she was engaging before and now with, these footprints and whatever's out here, whatever's made them. And he gets close enough to where he can, again, clearly see there are footprints. And he sees the stride of these footprints is long enough that it could be a person. It could also be an animal. He doesn't really know. It's too deep to see the actual imprint, to see if it's, a boot or a paw print or a hoof or something. But he's just taking it all in, and he's looking at the footprints, and they sort of come out of the tree line. They haven't come up the road. They come out of the tree line and sort of pace around a little bit, sort of on the road that leads in, and then they turn and they appear to go back into the tree line. Not totally unusual, but it registers for Nate that this is a little bit odd. You know, if that's a person, what are they doing out here?
Yeah,
and I didn't see him, and I've been, you know, up and moving around the kitchen quite a bit, and based on the snowfall out here, there's a pretty good chance that these prints were made in the last 30 minutes, the last hour. You know?
Yeah, but he could have been engaged in a PlayStation game. He could have been playing something, and then, like, you know, just walking around to get a drink, and that has already happened. You know, PlayStation games are deceptive. Because when you're playing them, you think you're playing them for 10 minutes and you look at your watch like, oh shit, it's 2 hours. You know what I mean? That happens.
These are recent and I didn't see anybody. That's just weird. But Nate kind of does what I think most of us would do, which is like, there's probably some reasonable explanation for this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna worry about it. So he takes Midnight, who by this point really wants to go investigate these footprints and whatever's made them, but he drags Midnight back. He brings her back in the house, in the cabin. He goes inside, and now at this point, he can't help but feel a little on edge, a little bit
sick,
like
someone could
my
be
privacy
there.
has been invaded by someone or something. And so he actually draws the blinds, locks the windows, locks the doors, and he's like, I'm just gonna sort of cave it up for the rest of the day. I'm not gonna think about what's out there. It's probably just animals or whatever. It's no big deal. So he's back in his cabin, and over the course of the afternoon, again, the windows are all drawn, and he's just sort of enjoying video games. He's sort of forgotten about the footprints. Midnight continued to act really strange. Not all day, not the entire afternoon, but periodically it was like something kept spooking her. And she kept running to the various exits of the cabin, whether it was a door or a window, and she would whimper like she really wanted to look or go outside.
Okay.
And Nate, you know, a couple times he let her out to go to the bathroom, and it seemed like each time she'd be drawn to those footprints, but he wouldn't walk over there. He kind of kept her close to the cabin.
Yeah.
But it was like all day, Midnight just could not let go of there's something out there. There's something going on that's piquing her interest. And for Nate, who admits that, you know, he considered himself a pretty tough guy, you know, who was used to being out in the wild by himself. I mean, his mom didn't care at all.
Been out with his dad fishing and stuff, hasn't he?
Yeah, go out into the wilderness in Oregon, you know, be out there as long as you want by yourself. It says something about his competency, at least his perceived competency. But he was pretty spooked. He was starting to feel spooked. He just felt like something weird's going on. But, you know, he began to just, he continued to tell himself that it's no big deal. So that night, they're back in the cabin. Nate makes sure everything is locked, everything is shut, all the blinds are drawn, and he goes upstairs to the bedroom where he sleeps, the master bedroom that has the sliding glass doors that look out to the short balcony that looks out over the
curtains
and down to the road below. And he gets in bed, and Midnight pops up on the bed with him, and they lay down, and they are about to go to sleep when Midnight really gets spooked. Like something's going on for Midnight, like more than the whole day. Something really got her attention.
The witching hour.
And she bolts downstairs to the first floor. And Nate, you know, it's pitch black in their cabin, or close to it. They're in the middle of the woods in Oregon, very isolated. And he can hear his dog just pacing back and forth and whimpering near the door and pawing at the door. She really wants to go outside. And Nate, at this point, he is admittedly scared.
Yeah, no.
And he doesn't want to go outside. He doesn't want to bring her out to pee. He doesn't want to do anything outside. He wants to stay in the house, right? But he still feels like maybe she does need to pee. And so eventually he gets up and he goes downstairs. And sure enough, Midnight is just so stressed. She wants to go outside. He puts her on a leash. He grabs, you know, his cigarettes and his flashlight. He's like, I'm going to just be tough about this. I'm going to go out there, let her pee, come back in. He goes outside, and it's all dark. Snow's falling. He's got his flashlight. He's looking around. He doesn't see anything out there. Just snow everywhere, trees, snow's falling. And at midnight, doesn't want to pee. She wants to run off into the forest, and he's like holding her back. And
not the road this time.
He gave up on having her pee because he just felt like she's not out here to do that. She's out here for whatever thing she's sensed out here. And so Nate's like, enough. Comes in the house and he's like, you know what? If she needs to pee, she can pee in the house. Like, I'm not doing this. I feel unsafe being out there. I'm not doing it.
Facts.
Back in the house.
See, I don't know where Oregon is in America. I don't know what part of the world it is. Is it a place that's got loads of bears and stuff in? You know what I mean? Because it's a quite like wilderness in a forest. You don't really be wanting to walk into like a grizzly bear or a brown bear or something. I mean, I know black bears you can scare them off with making a noise. I've seen that on the TV with videos. But I mean, a black bear could still fuck you up if it wanted to, couldn't it? You know what I mean? Yep, you can pee in the house.
I'm not doing this. I feel unsafe being out there. I'm not doing it. back in the house, back in the cabin. They lock the doors. They go back to the bed. And so Nate now, he can't sleep. He's just laying in bed. Midnight is like on all fours on the bed, unable to settle down. And as he's laying there trying to convince himself that, you know, everything's okay, he hears something. Ooh. And it's coming from the roof. Uh-oh. He would describe it as what sounded like hooves walking on his roof. And there is no attic in this cabin. Like a minotaur. The roof is basically right above him. And he hears these 6 distinct steps across the roof, like someone's pacing or something, some animal, something is pacing across the roof of this cabin. And Midnight instantly is like looking up and growling. Midnight bolts off the bed. She runs over to the sliding doors that lead out to the balcony.
She wants to kick ass.
She's trying to go out on the balcony. And Nate, like, he's thinking, how could anything get up there?
Have I got a gun?
There isn't a way to get onto the roof. There is no way. There's unless you had a ladder. And he certainly didn't have a ladder out there that led up onto the roof. This makes no sense to him.
Might have been a window cleaner.
He's also thinking if somehow there was a tree tall enough, let's just say, that overlooked the roof, that maybe an animal leapt out of onto the roof, wouldn't I have heard the impact of it striking the roof? Similarly, if somebody was climbing up a ladder, I would hear the ladder. There's no noise machine going off. There's no fan going off in his room. It's silent. But all he heard were the 6 steps. And then the steps stopped. There was no other sounds. And so at this point, Midnight is over at the sliding doors that lead out to the balcony. And, you know, she's desperate to go out there. And Nate is sort of having this crisis. You know, it's not that late. He has the whole night ahead of him. He feels very on edge, but he sort of feels like, I can't just pretend this is not happening.
Yeah, facts.
Like I'm gonna be up all night regardless, but I need to face whatever this is. It's probably just an animal. And you know, maybe it's an animal that's stuck on the roof and it needs help getting down or something, whatever. But he sort of works himself up that he's like, I need to go out there. I need to go see what's going on. And so he gets up, he puts on his jacket. You know, he has heard no more steps at this point. Midnight's still over at the door. The room is dark. He walks over and he slides open the curtains. And he's looking out, and there's no light out there. There's a small light downstairs that kicks on with motion, but it's not on right now. It's just darkness. He can kind of make out with some moonlight, some of the snow coming down, but he knows he's looking out to the front of the property, but it's dark.
Because snow is reflective as well, and the snow on the floor, especially in moonlight, will light up to a degree, especially if the floor is full of snow. So it will give you that little bit of reflective light.
And then he grabs his flashlight. He's got it in hand, and he's like, all right. He opens up the sliding glass door, and he steps out onto the balcony. And the first thing he does, as soon as he's out
straight on the roof,
is he whips around and looks up at the roof behind him, because it's basically right in front of him from the balcony.
Yeah.
And he shines his light, and he's looking at the roof. And there's nothing up there. There's no animal, there's no person, there's nothing. And in fact, he can't even see any footprints.
Hang on, it could be like a big bird, an owl. You know what I mean? They do get quite big, don't they? If they landed on roof, but and flew off. Never know, dear. Could be a big bird. But it's a Mr. Ballen story, so it's not going to be as simple as that.
Which to him was incredibly relieving.
Probably the light button.
I'm scared. I'm making things up. There was never anything. But Midnight, meanwhile, who's right next to him on the balcony, she's now growling. And she's looking out. He can kind of tell she's looking out into the darkness in front of the house. And so Nate takes his flashlight and he goes from looking up on the roof and he begins to wheel the flashlight around. And he begins to scan the tree line, which from his perspective out on this balcony, that the nearest tree line is, 30 or 40 feet away, that tree line. And he's scanning the tree line, and Midnight's looking basically straight out. And so he's making his way until he's going to see whatever she's growling at. And he eventually reaches there's this one big tree that sort of sits almost right in front of the cabin. And it's got this long branch that they call it the sitting tree, because it almost looks like there's a seat on this huge branch that's like 20 feet off the ground. And his flashlight reaches the sitting tree and he stops, because illuminated by his flashlight is this man who's crouched, almost perched on this branch. And he's got these long arms and he's gripping a branch above him. He looks like he's not wearing any clothes. He's barefoot, and his mouth is wide open.
Skinwalker. It's a skinwalker. I've seen these on some of these fake horror videos.
He looks like he's not wearing any clothes. He's barefoot, and his mouth is wide open, and he's staring directly at Nate. And Nate, for a second, can't even process what he's seeing, but then he's suddenly so scared, his instinct is to grab Midnight, jump back inside of his house, shut the sliding doors, shut the curtains. And so he's just locked himself inside of his cabin. But as soon as he did that, he's like, oh my God, there's someone out there. I need to know what they're doing. Are they going to come try to attack me or something? And so it's only been a couple of seconds now. And from now, inside the cabin, the glass doors are shut. He opens up the blinds, does not open the door. He opens the blinds. Now he's got glass windows and he's looking out and he raises his flashlight and he presses it to the glass and he shines it on the sitting tree and there's nobody there now. And he looks all around and there's no one. It's just darkness. It's a dark forest. No one's out there. And so now Nate does not know what to make of this because he's heard footsteps on the roof. Impossible footsteps. He saw the footsteps yesterday that didn't really make any sense. His dog's been acting funny. This guy, whatever this is, he described it as being so tall, long, skinny, tall, gray-looking figure. Man. Clearly is out here, or I'm losing my mind.
Could be.
And so his decision was, I'm just going to stay awake all night, be vigilant, and wait this thing out. And tomorrow morning, as soon as the sun comes up, I'm out of here.
I'm going home.
And so he did a pass all through his house to ensure all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked, drew all the curtains, and then he and Midnight hopped on the bed in the master bedroom and just prepared to wait.
Yeah, they couldn't go to sleep.
He doesn't feel like it's safe to go to sleep.
Can't go to sleep.
And so he's sitting in bed. Midnight is totally on edge, but she's gone from being angry, like wanting to attack, to now being a little bit scared herself. And she's tucking up against Nate on the bed.
Right.
And after about 30 minutes, something downstairs gets Midnight's attention.
Oh,
Midnight
shit.
leaps off the bed, but instead of running down the stairs, she runs to the top of the stairs. And now
Do you know what? The way Mr. Ballen can tell stories and how he elaborates and how he describes things and how he puts that visualization in your mind, you feel like you're watching a movie. And if you're getting a little bit creeped out yourself, you start putting yourself in Nate's position, thinking, what would I do in that position? I'd be like, I'd be looking for a bat. I'd be looking for a gun. I'd be looking for something to go and knock this white thing on its ass with. Do you know what I mean? Or end up doing it. Because it'd be fight or flight. And if the snow's that bad you can't get in your car and piss off, then, you know, you've got to stand and fight. If it weren't snowing, you could be like, right, okay, grab my PlayStation because that's the one thing I need. Jump in the car and go. And if you get that white skinwalker thing gets in the way, just run the bastard over with your car.
leaps off the bed, but instead of running down the stairs, she runs to the top of the stairs. Now she's basically looking down to the first floor. Nate's on the bed. He's looking over at Midnight. And then Nate hears a tapping sound on his front door downstairs, almost like someone's tapping the door with their finger over and over again.
Oh my God.
It stops. And then Midnight sprints downstairs.
Terrorizing him.
For a minute, Nate's like, what do I do? I mean, is there someone, is that guy down there now? I have no idea what to do in this situation, so he just waits. And Midnight, she's pacing around, and eventually she calms down, and she comes back upstairs. There's no more tapping. And so Nate, his heart's racing. He's thinking, like, is this the same guy? What is this thing? Who is this thing? Who is this? A minute later, he hears more tapping, but now it's not coming from the first floor front door. It's coming from the side. He had a bathroom just off the master bedroom.
Yeah.
And there's a little sliver of glass that looks into the bathroom. And he can distinctly hear, even though he didn't hear any sounds of someone climbing the exterior of their cabin, which would be required to get to this, something is tapping on the small pane of glass, looking into the
You'd be shitting yourself, wouldn't you?
Nate's horrified. The tapping goes on for a bit. Midnight at this point is spooked. She's tucked up against him. She's just looking into the bathroom. The tapping stops. Then...
You would be shitting yourself, wouldn't you? Especially if you've got no weapon. I would definitely have taken a gun with me.
There's more tapping on the other side of the cabin. And for about an hour or so, this is how it went, all around the house. Just periodic tapping, all the different windows, the doors, the walls. There was no sound leading up to the tapping. It would just start somewhere around the cabin. It was absolutely terrifying. And then at a certain point, somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning, he heard the sound of footsteps out on the balcony.
It's always about 3 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? It's always happening about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm recording this at 2 o'clock in the morning, well, 2:27. By the time it's finished, it'll be 3.
And the tapping began on the glass of the sliding glass doors.
Oh, crap.
10 feet away from him and midnight. And all night, for the rest of the night, just sporadic tapping on that door. Until finally, the sun came up and the tapping stopped. And at that point, Nate is desperate to get out of here. He's so scared. But the sun is up now. The blinds are all drawn. He hasn't heard tapping in some time.
You never know, though, if you get in your car and bolt and get out of there, if this skinwalker thing is hidden in your truck. You know what I mean?
And he goes over and he opens up the blinds and he looks out onto the balcony. And there's all these hoof prints all over the front balcony.
Like a minotaur.
And he steps out onto the balcony and he looks down, and it's an unbelievable sea of hoof prints all around the house. There's a racetrack around the house. He turns, looks onto his roof. There's all sorts of hoof prints on his roof. They are everywhere. And so Nate grabs his dog, grabs his stuff, jumps in his car, speeds home, and could not have been happier that they sold that place within the next month or so, because he was never going to go back. And he has no idea what it was. So that's the story. I think it's called Who Was Knocking? So there you go. What do you think? What do you think of that?
I think it was a good story, man. Obviously, he's doing this on a live stream, so he's going to be talking to people, and I can't see who he's talking to. But I wanted a bit more of an ending then. I wanted him to find out what it was, but it's some sort of huffy skinwalker. At least we didn't get blagged this time like last time, with the like button being the absolute culprit in this story. But yeah, sitting here listening to Mr. Ballen talk like this, he just commands your attention without physically commanding your attention. And I love the way he tells it, because it's very visual. He describes every little thing that's relevant to the story. You know what I mean? A tree's a tree and the snow is a snow. You know what I mean? Don't say it's a white blanket of snow that's fluffy and frosty. He just describes the layout of the cabin, the actual sound of what was on the roof, and then going out and seeing the hoof prints everywhere. It was just very, very visual, and I was living that little part of that Nate had in this, and I was living that while we're like in the cabin. I mean, like I say, I'd arm up. And the thing is, though, if you're going into a place where there is animals that could attack you, like bears, etc., it makes sense to be taking a gun with you anyway, like a rifle gun. I don't mean like a little pistol popper, because sometimes, you're not going to stop a bear with a pistol, but a rifle, you know what I mean, with the big bullets and stuff. You'd definitely have something like that with you. And if you had that with you, you'd be booting that door open with your rifle and say, what the fuck do you want? Unless it was spiritual and a ghost, and then you're knackered, because it'd shoot straight through it and it'd take your soul with its mouth open. Anyway, what did you guys think of Mr. Ballen's story? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to give Mr. Ballen a like, subscribe to him, because the guy absolutely deserves it. Even though he has got 10.5 million subscribers, congratulations on him for that achievement, because that is amazing. And if you want to subscribe here too, I will not stop you, because it's, it's free to do so. And I would absolutely appreciate it. Right, I'm off to bed now, because like I say, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I need to get some sleep, as long as nobody's tapping on my fucking house. See you in the next reaction.